Well, hello out there. It's always different doing a webinar and looking at the screen and not seeing the other people on the other end. So I trust you're all out there and look forward to just sharing with you about navigating the winter blues, which it goes beyond that to navigating depression and sometimes anxiety and just general stress through the winter season. And yeah, as Luis mentioned, I've been doing counseling in a lot of different environments for quite some time and with Whitestone for 10 years now. And one of my great interests is to help people learn skills that will help them to cope or manage their depression, anxiety, stress, whatever that is, so that people don't have to continuously be coming back to me or my colleagues or another counselor, but so that you have tools. So I really, really value and appreciate the practical aspect of the counseling process and tools and skills that we can all learn. So hopefully tonight everyone will walk away with at least one new skill and potentially one new little nugget of information. So as you see the screen kind of alerting you there, if you haven't had a chance yet to grab a pen and a paper, go ahead and do that. We're going to be doing something maybe about halfway through where I'm going to ask you to use your paper and pen. And if you don't have access to paper and pen, it will not. It'll be fine. You can still follow along and do what we're doing, but it'll really help with the activity that I'm gonna encourage you guys to try out. So we're gonna move along here, and Luis may have already mentioned, but if you have questions as I'm going along, feel free to type those in the Q&A box. Luis will kind of help me see if there's anything that needs to be answered as I'm going or saved until the end. But feel free. It's okay for me to be interrupted with a question, especially if it's related to what I'm doing or presenting at that moment. Okay. So let me make sure I can get clicking through here. So I want to really just make sure to share with you guys about kind of those reasons why we might be feeling more low in the winter. And for some people, that's just a low mood. For other people, that's some type of depression. And for some, it's just additional stress or angst that we have. So I want to talk through that a little bit and the definitions and clarify some differences in case that's something you didn't really know as much of. So as you see here, there's some reasons of why that may be occurring during specifically the winter season. And so that can actually include the fall, depending on where you live and how soon it starts getting cold, or the sun starts going away a little bit more often and our days start getting shorter. So on the right here, we just have listed that, during the holidays, obviously general stress, added activities, seeing family and friends, which some of that can be positive experiences, and yet it is still a level of stress for us that can kind of create some additional shift in our mood. Um, Maybe even the lack of movement and unhealthy eating habits that have it during the holidays, or as we're just kind of hunkered down inside because we're not going out as much, right? Limited activities. Even for people who like to get out, you're probably not out as much as you would be when the weather is nicer. And that decreased sunlight. So the sunlight has an impact on our serotonin, our good feeling hormones that our body produces. And so that and things like our vitamin D levels, the sunlight really helps. And so when we have limited sunlight, especially in the winter, that good feeling hormone is maybe flowing low for us. And so finding ways to kind of help boost that serotonin. And then sometimes our melatonin levels, which are levels that help our sleep cycle, another hormone in our body, those can get impacted by the sunlight changes, the daytime changes, and how our sleep wake cycle is functioning, and that rhythm can get interrupted for some people. So those are some of the things of maybe the whys winter can become just more difficult. And then there's some general risk factors that something I guess I didn't really know until recently is that women are more likely to experience a deeper depression during the winter season. And so I think it was 1 in 5 something like that as statistic wise. But so sorry, women, if we're more likely to experience it. Men will too, just women are more likely. And then uh, anyone who has already been diagnosed with bipolar or any other depression or mental health history is more likely to experience low mood or depression during the winter season. And if there's any family history of that happening as well, it can be more likely. And then obviously living further north, right? Living further away from the equator in an area where it's just a little bit colder or a little bit snowier or darker in the winter, right? I will just say I am from the other side of the lake, Lake Michigan. And the fact that I live here, whenever we have a string of days where we don't have sun, I remind myself it is way sunnier here than on the other side of the lake. So if there's anyone out there who knows the other side of Lake Michigan, you know that even when we don't have sun here, we still get it more often than on the other side. So I try to reframe my thinking when I'm complaining about the sun being gone for so long about that. So let's go ahead and look at some different types of these mood shifts we can have. We've heard the phrase, probably all of us, about like I have the winter blues, right? And that's really just a phrase. It's terminology that we use to kind of emphasize that it can be common in this season to kind of have a dip in our mood. So it's not a diagnosis. It's really just a thing that can happen for most people on some low level. And the common thing across the board here is that lack of motivation piece that people can have in the winter and some level of lower mood, right? And the winter blues can often be like the things that are triggered by the holiday stress or um, remembering good memories or remembering hard memories because of the holidays. And often it's pretty minimal. It comes and it goes. It can be short in duration. It can be a couple hours that we feel kind of a blah or not interested mood. Or it can last a couple days maybe, but it's not significant impact on us. It may not even impact our general functioning. It might just be something we notice is there, kind of that. So, and usually that can resolve on its own or be redirected by going and doing something we enjoy. So, seasonal affective disorder now is a diagnosis that you would get from a professional. And if you haven't heard of it, some people call it SAD because the letters stand for SAD, right? Seasonal affective disorder. And so that and major depressive disorder have a lot in common. And so that's why I wanted you to see them side by side here, and we'll talk through that a little bit. Those commonalities being, someone feeling depressed and or irritable. So if you didn't know it, irritability can be a symptom of depression or types of depression. And just to share, these aren't here necessarily for you to diagnose yourself and say, that's just it. But if you notice these things going on in yourself or people around you, maybe it can be a moment of saying, hey, maybe we should reach out and talk to somebody. The other piece is that these things, there is criteria to get diagnosed, and also there's a collective of things. So if somebody's just not motivated, but really have no other symptoms, then it may not be depression. It may be something else. So just know that in our work as counselors, we're helping people navigate how to know what's really going on and maybe when it's something else. So as we keep going through here, a decrease in interesting activities, things that you used to enjoy. If you're feeling seasonal affective or major depression, you may not be enjoying those anymore. And that could be a good signal for some people that something has changed because I'm not enjoying this anymore. That limit of focus or being able to problem solve or concentrate, some people will call it brain fog, right? Just can't quite make things connect, especially if you could make them connect well before. And then we start shifting in some areas where we see the difference. So with seasonal affective, somebody is probably going to have an increase in fatigue, which can happen in depression as well. But in major depression, it can go either way. You could have an increase in needing to sleep, or you could not be able to sleep at all and have insomnia and things like that going on. With seasonal affective, it just seems to be more of that dragging fatigue that just goes on through the season. Needing more sleep, maybe napping more regularly, an increase in eating, which I also think just kind of comes with us being inside more, being cold and wanting to be warm, right? Like grabbing something to eat and feeling like that we can eat and get cozy and kind of make it through the winter like that. So of course weight gain can be an issue, and the issue of social isolation because we're not going out as much maybe, and even when we are, maybe we're not seeing as many people or we're not being as intentional, especially if we're just going to and from work. And suicidal ideation can happen in seasonal affective disorder if someone's experiencing it to a significant level. So with seasonal affective, it can be minimal to severe in how it's happening, and it can be impacting somebody's functioning throughout their day, meaning it's difficult for me to work or get to work. I'm struggling in relationships. That irritability maybe is getting in the way of my relationships. The difference with depression here is that while depression can also be mild to severe and have some suicidal thoughts or ideations for people, the difference really is that timing of how it's happening. The seasonal affective will begin in that colder season coming, and someone who experiences that will typically see that depression go away as the spring, the warmer weather, the increase in daylight and longer days comes. And so if you notice that it's been 2 years in a row, that's kind of one of the things with seasonal affective, that low mood has been happening, it's more than likely something like that is going on. Whereas major depression, you're not going to necessarily see a shift in the spring and then again a shift in the fall and having that rhythm. It really would be that would continue even if the season changes or that it is started or stopped regardless of the season that is in. And so with major depression, we look at that as, certain symptoms occurring most days for longer than 2 weeks. And that's where a professional can help somebody kind of discern what might be going on. And something I didn't put up here, but comes along a lot with the winter is when we're grieving things. It feels like grief is bigger in the winter, maybe because of all of this that we're talking about. But one little difference that I like to help people understand between am I grieving or am I depressed is usually when we're grieving the loss of a person or a loss of an expectation or experience or something in our lives, the difference with that low, sad mood that we may be having with it is that when I'm grieving, I can still go do some things that I enjoy and find the joy in them. And I know sometimes people will say, I'm wrong for laughing or I'm wrong for having a good time while they're grieving, which is not true. It just means we're grieving, and sometimes it will be hard and sad and difficult, and other times we'll be doing okay. Whereas if I'm starting to feel depressed, that's where that difference will be that I may not be enjoying the things that I used to enjoy. I can't really redirect that low mood or that grief. So that can be a little bit of a difference that we can be aware of. So then we're going to move on to just thinking about okay, we kind of know what might be going on and who might be more at risk. Let's talk about things to consider for how to help, how to help ourselves navigate these things through the winter season, right? So at Whitestone, we really like to look at people the way that I believe God looks at us and the way he designed us, which is as whole people, right? We are body, mind, and spirit. And in some cases, we break that down even more, right? That we have the physical part of us that we want to maintain. We have the emotional, the mental, right? We have our relationships and how those impact us. We have things like our decision making and that area of us. We have our vocation, our work, right? So we can break things up even smaller as whole people. And every one of those areas has an impact on the other area in our life, right? We can do our best to try to just separate everything and put it in separate boxes. But the reality is, they all connect and impact one another. And so when one area is maybe low or not, we're not functioning as well in another area, it's going to impact another part of who we are as whole people. And so that's why I wanted to bring these strategies and treatments to you in a way where we can look at them from these different areas of who we are as people. Okay, so as we walk through this, I just want you to be kind of considering, okay, in each one of these areas, and maybe there's some I haven't listed as far as areas here. Yeah, what is a way in that area that I can do something for myself or consider something different if I'm feeling low or depressed or even anxious and stressed during this season? Okay. So, our environment, where we are at, not necessarily environmental, right? We want to get outdoors, of course, and having fresh air really is wonderful for our body and the sunlight, right? Because that helps with those good feeling hormones. But even just thinking of getting outside to get out of this indoor space that we can sometimes feel trapped in. So, getting outside as much as you can, right? Changing the environment of where you are present, opening the blinds and turning your lights on. It can get easy if you're feeling low to just want to like slump out of bed, not get dressed, right? Not open the curtains, lay on the couch, or do whatever until you have to leave if you're going to work. If you don't work, then maybe you don't want to get up and do anything. So sometimes just that act of opening the blinds, letting the natural light in, or turning on lights, right? It's brightening up the environment around us, even when the environment outside maybe isn't so bright. So, and then some people have found it helpful to do some light therapy, and light therapy, not qualified in it, so I don't have tons of information, but I do know people that have benefited from it. And there are certain types of light therapy lamps that can be purchased that are much brighter than a regular light you would have in your house. And there's specific instructions of how you would use that for a certain amount of time, where you set it in front of you and people can read in front of it or kind of sit in front of it. And it acts as though it's kind of an alternative option to sunlight without the bad UV rays, of course, that can kind of help boost that seasonal affective mood shift, right? So that may be something to explore and talk to a professional about that knows and can guide you through that. So you think about that. What could be an environment change or shift that I could make around me? I think sometimes for me, it's just having a hot drink with me. That warmth helps kind of boost, right? The cold, dark feeling. And even drinking something warm can be something there for us. So relationally, in that area, things that we can consider are being intentional about connecting with the people in our lives. It can get really easy when you're feeling low. I want someone to reach out to me, right? Why do I need to reach out? I'm the one who's feeling low. I would love for someone to reach out to me. And while that can be really easy to think, the reality is often the people in our lives don't know that we want them to reach out right now, right? Because maybe we haven't told them, or maybe we're not experiencing things to a significant enough level that the people around us notice. Or maybe you're someone who you're feeling it internally very deeply, but you can fake it really well, right? You can go out there and do life really well without people noticing that you're feeling depressed or low. So be intentional. Call someone, text them and say, "Hey, will you give me a call? I'm having a hard time tonight." And excuse me, I will say, if you already can't hear it in my voice, I've gotten sick, which is also something that occurs in the winter, right? So excuse me for my raspy voice and tissues and things. It comes with the season. So calling, yeah, calling people, connecting, reach out to them. And if you need, join a support group or join a small group if you're not part of one. Something that kind of will make you get up and get out and get connected and be a part of things. And knowing who your safe and supportive people are, We all need safe and supportive people. So thinking through, if you feel like I don't have anyone in my life, I'd encourage you, maybe you sit and write down on a piece of paper, okay, who is one person that I know I can go to if I need a listening ear or just need someone to sit with me and think through, not just friends or family, people at your church or people at your work, people that you see on a regular basis. And maybe it means that it's time for you to take a step out of your comfort zone a little bit and reach out to someone that could be that person for you, but you just don't know that because you haven't connected with them yet. So maintaining those connections, right? If you're married, or have a significant other, right? Being able to try to utilize them as a support. And I know that that's not always a safe and supportive person for people, but think through who you have and be really intentional. That physical area of our life. Okay. So I'm taking my water, right, to keep myself hydrated. It's helpful as we're sick and just in general, the physical part of us. Get moving, whatever that means for you, can be hugely impactful when we are feeling low and if we're feeling depressed, because it can get those serotonin levels that are running low working in our body as well, right? It can also exert cortisol levels, which cortisol is our stress hormone. And so if we are working and moving enough that we're sweating, we can be exerting cortisol. So it's like a twofold. We're getting rid of the hormones that aren't helping us, and we are upping the hormones and that serotonin that is helpful to us to feel better. So pick your activities. If there's things you like to do, then go try to do those more. And I know that maybe those are more limited in the winter, especially if you like things that are more outdoors. But I know there is more out there. Sometimes we just don't know where to look. So ask friends about things, check into gyms or rec centers around you. I think of things like pickleball that people play inside all the time, or is there a walking track somewhere? Or places like one of the local malls that you could go and walk inside when it's too cold to be outside. So sometimes we have to think outside of the box to do those movement things. And there are options. We just have to really think and consider what they are. So pick the ones you like and go be intentional about doing those. And then making healthy choices with eating, of course, right? If we eat junky food, we're going to feel junky. I mean, we're all, culprits of that at times, right? So trying to just eat better. And sometimes it's just about saying, I'm going to make a healthier choice right now than I did the last time that I ate. Right? It's not about trying to make extreme shifts. We're in the new year, we're just started. It's easy to like have all those resolutions kicking in, right? And yet, sometimes the best route is saying, what is the one best next step for me? Right. And that can be applied to a lot of these areas, not just eating healthy. All right, so behaviorally, something that can be really helpful in the winter and even any time of the year when we're dealing with depression is trying to have a good routine or create a good routine. Because when we are just kind of trying to go with the flow, when we're not feeling motivated and we can't focus, right? Or it's harder to problem solve, then when we don't have a routine, sometimes that's when it's easy to just like want to lay on the couch or just eat a whole bunch of food or not get done the things that we need to get done because we just don't feel like it. Right. So creating a routine, even if it's a very simple routine, right? So if waking up in the morning, just being able to add open my blinds and change my clothes is going to be my routine to help me get going, get moving. That can be it, right? It doesn't have to be a 10-point routine that you do flawlessly every day or you won't feel better, right? So setting alarms and reminders can be helpful. And as I see that, I just say for all of these areas, there's more strategies, right? And I encourage you each to be thinking of what strategies can work for you or have worked for you, right? To add to these lists. I just wanted to give a few examples for each. So, setting alarms and reminders, I put there because that's something I have to do during the winter. And because I am a part time mom and a part time counselor, and then a part time whatever other hat that I end up wearing in the winter, it seems like my routine just shifts and I can't always keep track of everything very well. And if I don't have like those typical routine things, then I'm like, what day of the week is it? And then if you're already feeling low or depressed, you may also be feeling like, I don't know what day it is because I don't feel that great. So setting alarms, whether that's not just wake up alarms, but alarms and reminders to help you know that you have appointments coming up or that there's a task that you need to do or an encouragement, get up and get moving, right? Anything that will help you and be an external reminder. And then thinking of the behavior shift of reducing or limiting your screen time. I know that can feel like, but that might be like what I spend so much time doing. Well, one, that might be part of an issue for you is being on your screen so much, maybe impacting your ability to focus or your relationships or your mood. But also, just when we think of how much time we can be on a screen or a phone, how much it can be pulling us away from reality, right? If I'm so invested in what's going on my phone or my screen, while there are absolutely times that it's appropriate or it's work, right, that we need, having a better balance in that and being able to take some time away, especially when it's things like social media, right? If I am feeling okay, let's say, and I go get on social media and I am bombarded with things that I didn't necessarily write, but I'm looking at them and they're negative, let's say, that's going to start impacting me all of the sudden in my day that's going okay. Whereas if I say, hey, I don't want to look at that right now because it might impact my mood, that might help us shift the way we look at social media. Sometimes there's good things on there, of course, not bashing social media. I use it too, just knowing the impact that it can have on us, right? If we think about, I know there's this verse in the Bible, and this is one that I always forget where it's at, but it's kind of talking about out of the overflow of our heart, our mouth speaks, right? I think that's true about our mind as well. Whatever we're filling our mind with is what kind of overflows out of our mood and our emotions and even the way we treat people, right? If I am filling myself with things that are negative and yeah, you get him and everybody's out to get everybody, right? That is just going to add to you feeling kind of versus if we think about thinking on things and filling our mind and our heart and our life with things that are pure and good and righteous and noble and honorable, right? That list that we've read in scripture that talks about those things, then we're going to feel more good and right and pure and honorable, right? And righteous. So think about what we put in our body. That can be a behavior shift. And then emotional and mental. So, of course, this is kind of in the area where we work a lot and where I work a lot with cognitive behavioral therapy. And I'll explain that in a minute if you don't know what that is. But just thinking about how we think, right? And how we feel about things and how it impacts us every day. And in the winter, if we are feeling lower in mood or we're feeling depressed, it can get really easy to then start thinking more negatively or vice versa. If I'm already thinking more negatively as it's like winter's coming, ugh, I'm not going to be able to do anything anymore, right? That thinking is going to have me feeling kind of, right? So they're connected to one another. So if we can work on reframing our thoughts, shifting our perspective, and we're going to talk more about that when we talk about the skill that I'm going to show you guys. And then journaling. For some people, journaling is just a really great outlet for all the thoughts or feelings going on internally when you are in a place in the winter where maybe you're not doing as much as you would. Or maybe for people who enjoy having a little bit more of that me time in the winter, still being able to journal and have an outlet. We all need outlets for our emotions and our thoughts because the reality is, if we're human, we have emotions and we have thoughts. God designed us that way, right? And our feelings just exist. Okay? They're not right or wrong. Our feelings just exist. And some of us have to figure out how to recognize the feelings and know they just exist. And then what can we do with the thoughts that are connected to them? Because the feelings just exist. The thoughts may be there, but it's what we do with that that can turn into a not helpful thing, right? If I'm feeling low and depressed and my thoughts are, I just, I hate the animals that we keep in our house, and then I go and take out my frustration on my cat, let's say, and kick him across the room. That's not a good thing, right? That's a wrong. So knowing that our feelings just exist, not right or wrong, let's work on not judging our feelings, yet reframing the thinking connected to them so that our thoughts and our behavior shift and therefore our feeling can be different. Again, we'll go over that in a few minutes. And then medically, right? If we think of um, for some people, the depression is significant enough that it's impeding your functioning every day. If you can't make it to work, if you can't get up and get moving for the day at all, if your relationships are deteriorating, if your body is hurting and you're having physiological impacts because of depression or stress, talking to a doctor. Okay. I think that my philosophy on medication and mental health, right, is that I look at how people are functioning. If someone is functioning at a level where they can learn skills and they can talk through what they need and they can start applying those things, then I think that's great. And they may not need any type of medication to help. But if someone is not functioning well, they can't do the things that they need to do, basic things throughout the day. They can't work, they can't take care of their kids, whatever that would be, or dealing with so much pain, then that's where I say let's talk about if there's medications that can help reduce some of those tensions and stressors so that then the therapy that I would encourage people to do at that point can be that much more effective because my depression is a little bit lifted or my anxiety is a little reduced. And so now I can actually do some work in learning some skills and taking care of myself. So think about if talking to a doctor is necessary or if just general blood work. Is my vitamin D level low? Are my iron levels low? That can create fatigue. Thyroid issues can create fatigue. Seasonal allergies, right? I know it can get confusing because sometimes there can be so much we're trying to sift through to figure it out. But that's also why counselors are around. If you're at a place where you just don't know what's going on and want to talk with somebody and get some better clarity, then meet with a counselor, right? Or talk to your doctor, especially if it feels like it's a lot of physical stuff. So, those are some things to consider. I'm going to encourage you to look at these areas and maybe jot down on that paper you have. Wasn't why I had you grab the paper, but still jot down on that paper something in each one of these areas. Or if that's too much for you, just jot down, 2 or 3 things that for you could be a strategy to help boost your mood this winter. Going back here. So, what is cognitive behavioral therapy? Not therapy. Wow, that was a funny slip of the tongue there. Okay, so I'm gonna say this as we get into this. This is gonna feel fast whenever I talk about cognitive behavioral therapy in general, and then also thought records is what we're going to talk about next. It always feels fast to people. And that's why I actually have a whole group that I do on this skill of thought records, because the reality is it's something that takes time and it takes practice. So if you feel like, whoa, what did she just say? And we just blew through that. just know that's pretty normal. But I'm hoping that at least, again, there's one little piece you can take away about thought records that you can apply to yourself or help somebody else apply to themselves. So cognitive behavioral therapy is really the thought that there are things that we can easily get so focused on, they keep us stuck, especially in our thinking and behavior. And so cognitive, the thinking piece, behavioral speaks for itself. Therapy is when we can work with people with strategies and ways to help them consider, how can I challenge or change my thinking, or how can I challenge or change my behaviors so that I can feel differently, right? And so that triangle there just emphasizes that our thoughts, our feelings, and our behavior, they're all connected, right? Just like us as whole people, they're all connected and they're impacting each other. Okay, so that's like the bottom line of thinking about CBT. So when I think of CBT as well, I just can't help but consider how God views it all too, and how the Bible represents this to us in the way that we think about things and how it impacts us. So we think about in Corinthians how it talks about taking every thought captive, right? Demolishing arguments, things that are not from God, things that are not what He intended us to be experiencing, right? Does that mean if I'm depressed or stressed or anxious that I'm sinning? No. I just want to say that to be really clear. We live in a broken world that is not as God intended, right? And so we deal with things like depression, anxiety, sickness, death, right? All those things. However, we can do our part in recognizing that we don't have to just live in it, right? Be in the world, but not of the world. So, working on taking every thought captive and taking that to the Lord, right? Or getting help and talking through things so that they are no longer just keeping us stuck. And then in Romans, the renewing of our mind, that really is what I think of when I think of cognitive behavioral therapy, and what I'm going to show you next is helping us renew our mind so that we don't continue following pathways or tapes in our head that we've been thinking for a long time that keep us stuck. Okay, so T is for thoughts, F is for feelings, B is for behavior, right? So if cognitive behavioral therapy, that basis is that they're all connected, a lot of times CBT skills and work and therapy is focused on the changing our thinking. Because if we can change the way we think, that will shift the way we feel and therefore shift how we behave or how we respond to whatever's going on. Okay. So if that makes sense, we're going to talk about a skill called thought records that helps us shift the way we think, which may change the way we feel, which may change the way I behave or respond. So I'm just going to show this to you. This is where your paper is going to come in handy. And this is going to be kind of the last thing that we do together as we step into more Q&A time, if you want that, and a little bit of practice time. Okay. So, all right. So this is a template. Thought records. Maybe you've heard of thought journaling. If you've ever heard of anything, same thing. Okay. This is a template of how you could do a thought record. There are various templates out there. There are also apps that can be used to help walk you through a thought record. And so I can go over a couple of those if I remember to come back to them. But the reality is, when I teach this skill, I just really encourage people to go practice it, whether it's on paper, in an app, in the notes part of your phone. You can create like this type of thing, just giving headings, whatever it would be. I just encourage people to practice it. So the basic process of writing a thought record, which is a type of journaling, it's a type of us processing what's been going on to better understand our thought patterns, how we're feeling, how we're behaving. And the end result, the goal is to get to this bottom box, to rewrite our thinking, to reframe our thinking so that it's more helpful to us. Maybe it's more rational to us, right? So this is just a framework. If I had a situation, I would fill in the top. I'm going to show you examples. I would then write thoughts of that situation, thoughts that are my thoughts, my self talk. So I tell people write it in quotes, write that section in quotes, because when you see it in quotes, you remind yourself, this is what I'm saying to me, right? So, what automatic thoughts come up in a situation? I write in quotes. There's no number of thoughts, feelings, behaviors that you have to list in these, by the way. It's just you're trying to take notice and write it down. Okay. So then, what am I feeling in this situation as I'm having these thoughts? Feeling words. I have a list for you if you don't have a good repertoire. Behaviors. How am I behaving or responding in this situation as I'm thinking these thoughts, feeling these feelings, right? And then we're going to talk about thought distortions. What thought distortions am I having? So let me go to the next screen to kind of help us a little bit more see this in a bigger package here. So this is a feelings wheel. It's a great resource to use when doing a thought record, or at least to think back to that there's so many feeling words out there. And sometimes we get stuck in the words that I like to call like the mad, sad, bad, and glad, right? That like people will say, I'm just feeling mad. Well, we can feel frustrated, and that's completely different if I'm feeling rage at something, right? Different levels of mad. Or I can feel content and then also feel, um, let's say, excited. I see on there. They might be in the same big category, but content, we kind of feel like is like, okay. Whereas excited, there's way more energy behind that, right? So we want to expand our feelings words. I mean, that's the reality is the more we can identify the clear level of feeling, the more that we can do something with it or not do something with it. Sometimes we just need to sit with it and help move through it. So feelings wheels can be really helpful. And then this other side of the page is the thought distortions. So, just to highlight a couple, we all assume things about the world around us, and often it gets us in trouble, right? So that may be the jumping to conclusions that's on this list, or overgeneralizing. It's another common one. You never take the trash out. That word never is an overgeneralization, right? Because in most cases, the person maybe does take it out sometimes, but not as much as we would like them to. Right? And so we say you never, right? So keywords like never, always, no one, right? Those can be hints that we are overgeneralizing. And maybe I can reframe to, I feel like I often take the trash out, right? And I would like you to help more reframing ourselves so that we're not stuck in those overgeneralizing terms. And then another couple here is magnification, blowing things out of proportion. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Emotional reasoning comes up a lot. And really, that is just like when we are feeling a certain way, we believe that that just assumes that the situation is that way. Like if I feel like if I think I've failed at something, now I feel like I've failed, and therefore I am a failure. That's emotional reasoning, right? Or if I don't feel like doing something, it doesn't mean I shouldn't do it, right? Or there's no reason to do it. Sometimes I don't feel like going to work. I think we've all dealt with that, or going to school or going to the gym. And yet it doesn't mean, well, I don't need to do it then because I don't feel it. Sometimes we need to do the behavior and the feeling will come. So if anybody needs to hear that tonight when you're feeling depressed, sometimes we have to fight back against that depression or that low mood or those winter blues. And we have to make ourselves do something we don't feel like doing, yet that feeling will come after we have done the enjoyable activity or done the exercise or gotten out of the house. Okay. So these thought distortions are not helpful to us. And so we want to identify them. When you can identify more of what's going on, then you have a better chance to be able to fight against it, right? To cope and to manage. So I've got an example here. And I want to encourage you to maybe write your own situation from today. Okay. Thought records do not have to be worst case scenarios. And sometimes actually a thought record isn't all that bad. Like you didn't go through a horrible moment. It just helps you process what you experienced in your day. So I still encourage people to do them with good things because they can help you increase your awareness. Sorry, I think I just shook the whole table. Not having an earthquake over here. So in this case, I tried to think of something that kind of comes up with winter. Let me move some things so I can actually see my full screen. So you would write on your paper if you would take the time to draft a thought record out. And that situation is whatever it is you're writing about. So an event got canceled due to the weather. It happens. It happened in the last couple weeks, right? When we had our big snowstorms, we had the like supposed to be storm, but really wasn't that big of a storm. And then the big one, and then the ice storm. So it impacted things. So somebody's automatic self-talk thoughts may have been things like, ugh, why does this always happen to me? Always, there's that key for overgeneralizing. I'm sick of being stuck in my house, right? Oh, today is going to be ruined because of this. Why do I even bother, right? And then the person is going through and really I tell people look back at your automatic thoughts on this paper, and this is why it's listed this way, and look, like when you read those, even if you couldn't tell how you were actually feeling, when you read those statements, what do you think you're feeling? Right? Even if you don't know for sure, because maybe you're just not as aware of feelings. When I read these words, yeah, I could see that annoyed would be a feeling, or disappointed, irritated, defeated, fill in the blank there. Behaviors might be, I rolled my eyes at the message that came through saying the event was canceled, or I, threw my phone on the couch because I was like, oh, goodness sakes, again, right? Mumbling under my breath or snapping at someone in my home. Then I can maybe notice, okay, I personalize that like it was a cancellation just to me, or I'm focusing on the negative of things or overgeneralizing. Okay, again, we're blowing through this really fast to give you an idea. And then I can take a look at what I have written. And now I want to say, how can I reframe my thinking? Because these automatic thoughts are not helpful to me. They're creating feelings in me that's not helpful to me, right? And then my behaviors are probably not helpful to me or the people around me. So, how can I reframe? So, some examples could be again, looking back at the automatic thoughts and saying, okay, if I look at, ugh, why does this always happen to me? How can I reframe that thought? No one has control over the weather, right? And that is fighting back against personalizing. I am not alone. This cancellation is impacting my whole small group as well, if it was a small group thing, right? Again, not personalizing. I don't feel like I don't like feeling stuck in my house, which is true. It's not necessarily a negative thought. It's just a fact. If you don't like being stuck in your house, you're allowed to say that and think that, right? And I can try to think of another way to get out for a few minutes, right? So that's the reframe, is not just being focused on the negative and stuck with, I hate this. And then there's a few other examples there that I'll just let you look at. So again, we just walked through this really fast. I would love for you to practice one as we're kind of ending. We I'd be glad to answer some questions. I also want to let you know that if any of what I talked about tonight, especially with the thought records and the CBT, has piqued your curiosity, or you're like, that would be super helpful to me and I want to know more, I feel like I'm about to do a sales pitch. That's so funny because I'm so not a salesperson. But the reality is, as Louise mentioned, I lead groups, and one of my groups is a coping skills group where we do thought records, amongst other things that are CBT related. But it's a 7-week group, and it's a group where you can learn more skills and walk through these processes, not just with me, but with other people that are experiencing maybe similar situations or also needing more skills or ways to cope, to process, to manage anxiety or depression. So it's a coping skills CBT group for anxiety and depression. So if you're interested in that, I do have a link, which Luis, I didn't get a chance to tell you, but I had emailed you that link if that's something you can put in the chat box for everybody to see, that you can fill out that link and I will know you're interested in that group or my other group that I'll mention, and I can contact you directly to answer questions or to get you registered, whatever that would be. The other group that I will be starting is a therapy group for senior adults. So that's really adults who are kind of in that phase of life, not really a specific age, but obviously it could be kind of more in the 60 plus, but just dealing with all the life stressors that come with things like retirement or thinking about retirement or having adult children and their issues that you're dealing with. Or on the other side of that, dealing with your parents, and if you're caregiving or concerned about their well being, right? And you're in the middle, or other life stressors that come, increase of health issues, feeling lonely or like you're all alone, dealing with a lot of change and a lot of loss in that season of life. So that's a group that's meeting twice a month. There's general info there for you. And then the coping skills is meeting once a week for 7 weeks starting March 13th. So again, if you fill in that link, you can get more information from me and I'll contact you. So I hope you can practice the thought record, but I want to know now, if we want to just open it up a little bit, if anybody has any questions about anything I talked about or anything that kind of got stirred up for you that you'd love to be able to ask, you can type that in the Q&A.
Hey, Janine, we have a question for you.
Yeah.
The question, I'm going to read it out loud. It says, for some, like me, CBT was not all that successful in terms of outcomes. Could simple conversations, discussion with a therapist also be just as helpful?
Yeah, great question. And that really goes to show that not every type of therapy or skill does work for everyone, right? Because we're all different people. And I think it's great that God has designed us as all different people. So I'm glad you asked the question. And yes, some people just being able to go in and talk with a therapist helps them process the things that they need to process, that maybe it's just maybe you're an external processor, let's say, and sitting with someone else and just starting to share your thoughts and your feelings allows you to get them outside of you and then kind of bounced back at you, and you begin to be able to sort through some things just by talking. So that could be an example of how that can be really helpful for some people. The other piece of CBT could be getting more work through that behavioral part of CBT, and how you can make changes with that behavior piece first, so that I do something differently and I begin thinking differently about what I just did and I might feel differently. So, yes, it's not that CBT is going to be, or this even strategy of CBT is going to be cut and dry or super helpful for everyone. And that's why I like to just talk through that with people when I meet with them and know my clients well enough as we get started to know which route will be helpful. If I can already tell that CBT is just not going to be helpful for somebody, then I'm not just going to say this is what we're doing and that's it. So seeking what can be helpful for you in the process, it can be helpful.
Yeah, great answer, Janine. Thank you for sharing that with us. Yeah, we have a couple more minutes. I'm not sure whether there's another question,
Okay.
but yeah, I was wondering, as I was hearing from you, as you think about CVT, is there a prayer that could be part of our reframing thoughts?
Mm. Yeah, that's a good question. And honestly, one of the ones that I go back to is the serenity prayer, right? And I don't know the whole thing, right? It's a lot longer than what we think of in that first term, but really, like, God grant me the serenity. And honestly, I don't even know it by heart. I have to look it up. But really asking God to help us know the difference, right? That wisdom piece. and what is in our control and what is not in our control. And so being able to ask him and pray in that, right? The other prayer that I talk about in my CBT group that's actually really short and really powerful is the prayer of Jesus is here with me now, right? Because even as I say that and remind myself of that, there is a rhythm in those words that help me regulate my breathing. So if I were to take a deep breath and to say that,
Mm.
Jesus is here with me now, I'm letting the rest of my breath out as I do that. And it's helping me maybe slow down in a moment. I encourage anybody, obviously, to ask the Lord to help you see the things that you need to see or need to hear to help yourself navigate each moment, right? That's the other piece, I think, is taking things sometimes moment by moment or day by day, because we know winter, for example, is going to last a decent amount of time. We know that it's a given. And so taking things a day at a time or a moment at a time and inviting God into that, right? I'm having a hard day. I know you're with me. Stay with me, right? Help me through this moment and these days. Help me use these skills that I'm learning. Bring someone, Lord, into my life that can be a person that I can talk to or process with that will help me, right? He wants to fulfill our needs and he wants to fulfill our requests in ways that are honorable to him, right? So inviting him into the process.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Janine. We've
Yeah.
have our ending point, but I just want to thank you again for sharing all of these things with us.
Yeah.
I want to thank those that took the time to invest an hour of your time tonight and
Yep.
join us in this webinar. We're thankful for you and for taking the time, and we hope and wish that you have a wonderful rest of your week.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Good night.